Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all, whatever you are joining us from. It's a real pleasure to have you in our company today for the Quarter 3 Impact Coalition meeting. We're nearing the end of the calendar year, but we've still got plenty to discuss in today's meeting, with another meeting before the end of the year. We've got a variety of topics and discussions to have in this meeting today, with plenty of speakers who I will introduce in time. As you're joining the chat, if you are so inclined, it would be great to have you to introduce yourselves in the chats, particularly where you're from in the world. It's always good to know who it is that's joining us today and where you're from. So a warm welcome to you all. Can I remind you that this session is being recorded and will be available on the Coalition's webpage. We will put that link into the chat and you can navigate yourselves already to the website, possibly not in this call today, but in days to come, we'll be able to navigate to previous meetings if you have missed the latest Quarter 2 meeting. You'll see the link and the video to that meeting on the website. So a brief welcome from me for those who I haven't met. If this is your first Impact Coalition call, welcome. My name's Jacob Ellis, or Jack, and I'm one of the co-leads for the Impact Coalition. There are a few of us who co-lead the Impact Coalition from across the world, from different sectors, but I will be chairing today's meeting. The Impact Coalition, I'm hoping that you are familiar with the aims and the purpose of the Impact Coalition, and just give a bit of a framing to that by just repeating what I do at the start of each call. So forgive me if it's a little bit repetitive for you, but we're the global civil society platform uniting diverse stakeholders, including youth networks, NGOs, academia, cities, and the private sector, to advocate, monitor, and catalyse action on intergenerational governance and the Declaration's commitments. That's the Declaration on Future Generations. So in framing today's call, it's no coincidence that we've decided to host the Quarter 3 meeting in September. It's a pivotal moment. In a few weeks, we'll be marking the 1 year since the adoption of the Pact for the Future and its annexes, including the Declaration on Future Generations, which passed at the Summit of the Future nearly a year ago to the day. So it's an opportunity, isn't it, to reflect on progress so far, the awareness that's been raised around the Declaration, and to assess what more now needs to be done. So where were you a year ago? Where were you when the Declaration was passed? And what reflections might you have on its progress to date? And indeed, many of you who are members of the Impact Coalition were pivotal in ensuring that the Declaration succeeded in being adopted, its content, its advocacy, and the work that went into encouraging the content to be as reflective and as inclusive as possible, whether that was through the meetings that we held, the briefings, or the many forums and summits, and the consultations, and lots of other forms of engagement with the UN. So our deepest thanks continues for your involvement in that process. And of course, the work continues, as I've illustrated, where we are highlighting the 80th anniversary of the UN, of course. And whilst there are difficult periods that we've been through, and no doubt in the coming months and years to come, there is an emphasis, is there not, on the importance of multilateralism, on coming together to solve challenges and to go beyond 2030 as our collective visioning continues to ensure that we build and create the future that we all want for current and future generations. So we'll be taking stock today, and there'll be opportunities during the UN High-Level Week, the upcoming High-Level Week, to discuss that in more detail. So what's happened in between, I suppose, is also worth sharing. So the ImPACT Coalition doesn't just meet or have significance at these quarterly meetings, but we engage and we continue to advocate for that implementation of the declaration. And I was recently in Paris at the Currents of Change Symposium, and the reflection there was one of both hope and risk. There are challenges, of course there are, but what I hoped that I was able to bring to the table was the energy around the importance of looking at the opportunities as well as the risk, and for us to be comfortable with uncertainty. There is something about possibly us accepting that we are living in this multi-complex period, and that risk is inevitable. It's how we manage, mitigate, adapt, using futures and foresight techniques possibly to better understand the signals and the various trends ahead of us. And a note that I'll be sharing much more of this in Q4, but I'll be representing the ImPACT Coalition in New Zealand. So I'll be visiting New Zealand for the first time next month and speaking at the Adaptation Futures Conference and having a variety of meetings and other speaking opportunities to energize, an important part of the world when it comes to future generations, drawing, of course, on the indigenous wisdom of communities that have been championing future generations mindsets, the seventh generation principle for centuries. And then how do we understand New Zealand's place in future demographics and where future generations will be born, and the role, the leadership of countries like New Zealand in taking the declaration forward. So if you are joining us from that part of the world, please do reach out to me following this call, because I'm very keen to see you in person, and for us to continue growing the movement locally for future generations as well. And very finally then, thanks to the European Commission, we hosted an insight session, our first Future Generations Insight session in July. It was an opportunity for us to have a deeper dive, if you like, into the work of the of members. And if you are a member on the call and you'd like time with each other, with the members on a specific topic, then again, do reach out and we'd be happy to identify and consider an insight session for you. If you were at that insight session, please do share your reflections in the chat about how you found it. And again, my thanks to Erica and the team for running that insight session for us in informing their new strategy, intergenerational fairness strategy. And I won't talk too much about the Guardians for Future Generations database, name to be confirmed, I think, but that's another example of how we work alongside partners in supporting various activities. And Dawia, who's a real champion of that work, and we're very pleased that she's able to join us once again, and her support for the ImPACT Coalition has been there from the very beginning, so she can talk to us about the work of that database a little later on. I'm now going to hand us over as I look at the time and realise that I've done the poor start of keeping to time. So I'll smile and say to my fellow speakers, keep to time as best as we can, despite perhaps breaking that rule myself already in this call. But Clara, thank you for joining us. You are a UN Political Affairs Officer and member of the Executive Office of the Secretary General since 2022. Perhaps it feels a little longer than that. So much has happened since then. But you were heavily involved in the preparations of the Summit of the Future and currently following, of course, the implementation now of the Pact. From your perspective, then, Clara, and welcome to the ImPACT Coalition call, we would love to know where we're at with the Pact for the future and possibly more specifically the declaration, especially amidst the ongoing UN 80 reforms. It's a bit of a strange period for us, isn't it? So if you could bring us up to date, that would be fantastic.
Sure, thank you. Thanks a lot, Jacob, and really happy to be here and to see the ImPACT Coalition literally thriving and with all these engagements and events. And it's been actually great following as much as possible what we've been doing for this past year. So it's just a great occasion for me to say again that looking at this 3 years, as you were saying, civil society and you particularly on these files have been extremely I would say essential in making the summit a success and the Pact for the Future, this ambitious document. It wasn't always easy. We know that the road has been sometimes bumpy, but we have this document and I'm very happy to report that it's being dynamically, energetically implemented. So I'm going to give you an overview of what's going on this file. So I won't be going back to the 3 years of process that led us to that. You all know it. I'm sure you know very well the pact as well and the declaration itself. So maybe just before I dive into what's been happening since last September, just a few words on the pact for those of you who may be a little less familiar with it. So it's quite a heavy document with 360 action points, 80% of which are for member states to implement. And I'm very happy to say that a lot of that has made quite big progress, especially given the geopolitical circumstances that are not always the easiest ones. 20% of these actions are for the UN to implement, and there's a whole structure, I would say, here at the UN, but also within the UN system worldwide that's working on that. So, and these 33 action points cover 5 different chapters, which you may know of, and I will briefly touch upon. So, so just to say that this pact implementation is kind of going along these 2 tracks: what's happening with member states, what's happening at the UN. So the good news is that when it comes to member states, we've seen actually quite recently in the past few months 2 real breakthrough moments kind of building on the pact. The first one being that member states agreed last month, on establishing global cooperation structures to govern artificial intelligence, which is quite new. This will be comprised of an independent panel on artificial intelligence and a global dialogue. And next week, 10 days from now, the President of the General Assembly will launch this dialogue during High Level Week here. Another breakthrough moment, thanks to member states' agreement, was the agreement reached in Seville in June on financing for development, including with strong language and commitments, on debt issues, literally building on language that's in the pact. So that's kind of to give you an idea of what's going on intergovernmentally. Now, at the UN, what happened immediately after the pact in October, a structure put in place by the Secretary General, basically a steering committee, started monitoring what's going on in every chapter of the pact. This includes on SDG, on international financial architecture reform, on digital cooperation, on peace and security, on youth, and on global governance. So what I'm going to try to do now, hopefully we have time for that, very briefly just give you one example of what has been done across each area of the chapter. The reason I think it can be helpful for you as well is because by nature, future generations are a cross-cutting theme. And I think it's very important that increasingly we manage to bridge the gap between the future generations agenda and those different agendas and basically constantly think in terms of dialogue between those 2 work streams. So chapter 1 is dedicated to accelerating SDGs and supporting basically development and how the pact can contribute to supporting sustainable development. Since September, we have an initiative called Tax for SDG that now covers 25 countries that are supported by the UN to digitalize their tax system and strengthen their national tax administrations through expert deployment and technical assistance. Chapter 2 of the pact is on peace and security. Yesterday, the Secretary General launched a report on the impact of military expenditures on sustainable development with concrete initiatives and advice to basically act on this area. Chapter 3, quite an important one in the pact as well, dedicated to digital issues. On this one, there was last month a report that was launched on innovative financing options for AI capacity building. Among other things, this report calls to create a fund to help least developed countries develop their AI infrastructure. Chapter 4 on youth. There will be soon, probably next month, a paper outlining possible modalities for a global youth investment platform, which is being finalized these days. And this paper will present different options for the UN for the best ways to finance youth-related initiatives worldwide. Finally, Chapter 5 is on reforming global governance, and I'm also happy to say that different options to measure progress that go beyond GDP are currently being worked out by an experts committee appointed a few months ago here at the UN. And finally, just to keep you informed, we're going to have a new website launched very soon, kind of keeping track on all these different initiatives. So now let me move back to the Declaration on Future Generations, which is obviously what unites us here. And basically, implementation of the declaration is part of this whole package of initiatives that are taking place here. So as you know, the declaration has paragraphs that are for member states to implement, but also places a mandate on the UN system, demanding that it gets equipped to support member states in embedding the needs and interests of future generations and long-term thinking in policymaking processes at every level. So I'm just going to say a few words on how we are working towards that with your great support and also with the support of many of you that are here today. So as you know, a special envoy on future generations is yet to be appointed with the current UN80 initiative and some, let's say, uncertainties still up in the air. We are working nevertheless to implement the declaration in the absence of an envoy at this stage across different work streams. The first one is we have an internal task force within the Executive Office of the Secretary General working on implementing the declaration. And part of this task force, my colleague Stefania, who's with me today, she might jump in later on, is as well. We're also working towards implementing and developing the Secretary General UN 2.0 initiative that came to life a few years ago and that's currently building up, that's currently accelerated here, which aims at modernizing the UN and injecting a forward-thinking culture based on innovation, data, digital tools, foresight, and behavioral science. Going back to foresight, we have a special entity working on promoting strategic foresight across the UN system and making it a capability to be used by UN entities to navigate complexity and uncertainty. You may have come across my colleagues from the Futures Lab. They are working very actively towards that, not only within the organization, but also to support the UN and governments to embed strategic foresight in the way they work. Finally, a lot of what we do has also to do with our great colleagues from UNU and Dawiya. I know you're here today. You're going to be speaking later on. And I will be, of course, very happy to hear you detail a little bit more all the great work you've been doing, including on the database. So thank you for that. Last but not least, the UN published in July for the first time a global risk report assessing significant threats posed to both present and future generations and coming up with kind of assessments on how to address them. So I'll stop here because I know that we have many speakers coming ahead, but basically maybe just a few words on what comes next. So High Level Week, we're going to have a few events coming up that are also kind of how would I say, along the lines of keeping up what's being done with the implementation of the pact. There will, for example, be a Security Council debate on reviewing peace operations and how they are adapting towards the future. There will be a biennial summit on with the participation of the heads of international financial institutions. That was also a proposal made in the pact. But maybe for you and for civil society and for this topic specifically, first of all, congratulations and thank you for all you've been doing. And as you no, it's absolutely essential that the implementation of the declaration is being done at every level, at every governance level, with your help and with civil society. So please continue raising awareness around the declaration, continue sharing your knowledge and tools and the data you have and the case studies you have and the solutions you've been exploring on this topic. And finally, continue using the declaration as a framework to seek accountability before international organizations, governments, local institutions. We really hope that it's going to be a blueprint that continue to be built on and develop and be actually adapted to the circumstances of the day as we continue. So I'll stop here. I hope I wasn't too long. I hope this brought something to the table. And please feel free to get back to me if you want more details on any of these chapters and initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. It is amazing, isn't it, how much has been achieved? No doubt there is much still to be done. And the frustrations, the layers of different bureaucratic problems and duties. Let's balance that as well. But our thanks to you and the team for continuing the efforts to ensure that it doesn't just remain a report, a piece of paper that's stuck on the shelf, but actually something that is practical and that is deliverable as well. We owe that not just to the many people that were involved in developing Pact for the Future, but we owe it to the generations to come that we commit and deliver on our promises. We have a few minutes maybe for some questions. If people do have questions, maybe they could indicate them in the chat. But I wondered actually at this stage, it possibly might not be a question, Clara, but I'm going to ask if Graham, who I've seen has posted in the chat, wouldn't mind coming off mute, popping on camera, and maybe sharing a little bit of what you're doing, Graham, in how you're supporting in the background, or how you are analysing and bringing some of this material together. Graham, is that an unfair ask of you to put you on the spot? But you've unmuted, so I'm hoping that you're willing.
Yeah, so I guess I'm the Graham you're talking about. Yeah, sorry, I would have done my hair if I don't have been on camera. Yeah, so just kind of a couple of quick things. So we have a project at Newcastle with a little bit of seed funding here from the ESRC to kind of support thinking and action around future generations. We're currently working on a paper to try and sort of tease apart the idea of foresight, which has quite a lot of kind of support, is quite widely employed, from kinds of ideas of intergenerational equity, as in the kind of European Union approach, and sort of a concern for future generations embedded in sustainable development. It's quite interesting how those all sort of different but related concepts with different ideas about the role of youth and those sorts of things. More concretely, I've just shared a link in chat to a couple of summaries that one of our research associates has done, just kind of to try and track some of the UN discussion around follow-up for the Pact generally. I think the interesting kind of question I'd have, which I guess is sort of links in, well, maybe it's kind of partly for me, I was kind of asking myself, what would it be useful to do over the next year or so in this kind of context? So given that kind of Clara mentioned accountability and the role of civil society organizations like this, I think probably one really interesting question to discuss would kind of what would the ideal role of something like the ImPACT Coalition or kind of members of the ImPACT Coalition be in terms of accountability for progress between now and I guess we're looking at that kind of stock take in 2028 of what's happened since the declaration. So kind of thinking about future generations specifically, there's probably a kind of interesting question there, but what's the most useful contribution to accountability in this sort of space? Is that okay, Jack?
Perfect. Not only have you given some reflections, you've on the spot come up with some really helpful questions. Clara, is that something that possibly you could respond to? This importance around civil society and accountability?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and thanks a lot for bringing this key milestone of 2028, by which the UN system is asked to report on future generations. And I think basically before we start kind of putting together the concrete structures of reporting, which is going to be another administrative big effort, as you were aware, that's where it's exactly starting. I think. I mean, the role of the ImPACT Coalition, I would say, is really to make this agenda concrete. So basically, work on the ground as much as possible, bring the information to us, to colleagues from UNU, to make sure that we use it to promote it here and that we share it with member states as soon as we can. Member states are also working, and from what I've heard, maybe establishing, hopefully, in the near future a group of friends and future generations, they will absolutely need your information, your expertise on what's being done. Another thing is we're also discussing how to use the language of the declaration to kind of look at the different things that are happening at the UN. And I think before this happens formally, and this may take time because we need member states agreements, it's basically very important that that we start doing it also informally. So for example, when you see this or that initiative, a new text coming out of the UN, I think it's a great moment to just look at it and say, does it tick the box of a text that responds to the needs of future generations? And sometimes it's easier to do, sometimes it's not. But I think the more you do that, the more you advertise that, the more you publicize language on that, the more you make it public, the stronger this agenda can become here at the UN. So basically, while there is no yet kind of very formal communication channels, there are these communication channels between us, like here today. And I think it's really ready to be built on in the future. So thanks a lot, Graham, for your question.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Clara, for your response. We will move on the agenda. Clara is sticking around for the call, so if you have questions in the chat, or subsequently if there are things that come to mind on reflection from this call, or if you're watching this recording and you have questions, then please do direct them to the ImPACT Coalition, and we'll be happy to pass them along and respond. We have a series of members spotlights now to bring you. We always in these calls want to ensure that the space is open for members to have their say, to share their work, and to connect across various sectors and geographical locations to share their work, and how that connects to the coalition. And so they've all been given the task of keeping to 3 minutes or so in introducing their reflections, and there'll be an opportunity at the end to also ask questions and respond to the speakers' contributions. So I'm going to start with Diana at the School of International Futures. Diana has been a good friend, as is the School of International Futures, to the ImPACT Coalition, and has been doing some amazing work in the background. I very much enjoyed the recent retreat. So if you are looking forward to something in 2026, consider joining the SWAF retreat. It's a great opportunity of bringing different people together to discuss futures and foresight and everything in between. But Diana, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about the work that you've done, particularly around updating this implementation handbook and these dialogues that you've been working on as well. Diana.
Thank you so much. And yes, good to see you, Jack, recently in Winchester. Thank you for the plug about our retreat. If anybody is interested in that, we do an annual retreat that dives deep into foresight and futures methods. So please do get in touch about that separately. But yeah, thank you so much for having me, and so good to see so many friends on the call. I've been asked to sort of share a little bit more about what we've been doing at the UN around the DFG, and keeping up the sort of momentum and urgency around implementing the commitments of the declaration. So I just wanted to share sort of this dialogue series that we've been running since February, March, April this year. And it was really an idea to take all of the sort of different learnings and innovations and championing the work that people across our networks in country are doing. I see Mohammed here from Nigeria, Nasa from Cameroon, Luca from Italy, all of these really, really amazing people that are trying to push the future generations agenda in different ways in their countries and regions. We thought it would be really inspiring to bring all of those stories and best practices to the member states at the UN to really just keep the momentum going around the declaration after the summit, and inspire more commitments, more discussion around what this agenda means for current policy debates that the UN is having. And so what we've done is in partnership with the permanent missions of Jamaica and the Netherlands, which you all know were the co-facilitators of the declaration. And in addition to that, the permanent mission of Kenya, we have been hosting sort of monthly dialogue events in New York around sort of the topics that are being discussed at the UN, sort of live topics like social development around the world, Social Summit, the SDGs around the political forum, UN 80 initiative around the Secretary General's initiative around UN reform. And we've been bringing sort of leading innovators around the world to come and share their experiences of actually what does it look like to incorporate or to consider future generations and intergenerational fairness in these topics. So things from, bringing this experiences of Canada's participatory budgeting process or the Sustainable Development Future Generations Sustainable Development Commissioner from Malta, those different kinds of innovations and bringing them right in front of member states at the UN. And it's been going really well. It's garnered a lot of interest. It's kept the sort of momentum up, which was the intention. And at the UN General Assembly this year, kicking off next week, we're doing a sort of 1 year on from the summit and the adoption of the declaration with the co-partners, with our co-hosts, Jamaica, Kenya, and the Netherlands, to take a look, to take stock of where we are, what the progress has been over the last year. And we've done that around sort of updating this implementation handbook that we launched at the Summit of the Future last year. It was a sort of just, bringing together all of our learnings as SWAF and across our networks. What does implementing the DFG look like? What can we learn from others that have done it, that are doing it on the ground? And this year we're updating that handbook to kind of reflect on all of the different developments that have happened over the last year. Everything from Nigeria and Italy to Cameroon to the ICJ ruling to Ukraine, lots of different innovations that we hope will really continue the momentum to 2028 when we have the first official review. So we're launching that in this kind of dialogue series structure. Next Friday, the 19th of September, will be the event, hosted by the Jamaican mission alongside the other co-hosts. And we're excited to showcase some of those case studies that we'll have in the updated handbook. So if you'd like more information, if you will be in New York next week and you'd like to come along, please do drop me a line. We're very happy to welcome members of the ImPACT Coalition there. Thanks so much, Jack.
Where you get the time, Diana, to do all these amazing projects and activities, and wishing you well in New York for that launch, and look forward to continuing to support and partner with SWAF and your pledge networks and pioneer networks. Get my words out. Are great examples of continuing to build movements and bring communities together. Thanks, Diana, for joining us today. We will move on to our second speaker as I navigate on my screen to Mohammed. Welcome. We heard your name being mentioned by Diana there, but Mohammed is from the office of the VP of Nigeria and will tell us a bit more about efforts in Nigeria to build anticipatory governance and foresight capacity at the national level. Mohammed, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for joining us. Do tell us about the work that you're doing.
Super. It's really a great privilege being a part of this. Can you hear me? Perfect. Thank you, Jack. It's a real pleasure to be part of this very dynamic group. I'm pleased to make it very brief and sort of give an update as my co-speakers have done. But I'd like to point out that the Anticipatory Governance and Foresight Capacity Program, we've really taken the foundational anchor for the program from the articles within the Declaration on Future Generations, specifically Article 28, which outlines the need for member states to leverage science, data, and strategic foresights to ensure long-term thinking and the necessary reforms for more adaptive, more resilient governance. And Article 33, which also emphasizes the need for investing in capacity building. And lastly, Article 33, which speaks to the need to have strategic partnerships. And based on that, we have a sort of whole of society approach. We recognize that governance is not the function of government alone, but involves stakeholders from civil society, academia, private sector, and indeed development partners, youth, underserved and marginalized groups. So while we recognize that for countries in the southern hemisphere and the global south, some concepts and ideals might be far-fetched and a bit idealistic. What approach we've taken is to launch a multi-part dialogue series so that we seize low-hanging fruits as opportunities to promote components of the Anticipatory Governance and Foresight Capacity Program, which include stakeholder engagement. And under that, we have the advocacy, the social behavioral change element, and building a community of practice. Secondly, the capacity building element, which we hope to enhance futures literacy and make institutions that are able to make use of foresight in their governance and policy processes. So I'm happy to say that since June of this year, we launched the multi-part dialogue series. We had a webinar together with the African Futures and Innovations Platform, which uses the international futures model that is also used across 188 countries globally and all the 54 nations of the African continent, projecting business as usual trajectories as well as more ambitious future alternative scenarios. We've done that. We've intimated stakeholder groups across all the different stakeholder buckets on tools that are more familiar to them. In this case, forecasting, which we believe forecasting is an element of futures work. That followed with an in-person workshop where we drilled down into the different scenarios and engaged partners within government and outside of government for them to validate based on the work that they do. What do you think the scenarios and how can you validate the scenarios? I'm also happy to say that in line or advancing this multi-part dialogue series, we have an ongoing engagement with UNICEF and UNICEF Innocenti. It's a 10-month child-focused foresight analysis, which has also launched. And we've established a core working group from government, private sector, academia, civil society, so that we're having the stakeholder engagement and we're having the capacity building, but we will also engage the youth in some of the horizon scanning exercises. We similarly have an engagement with partners from civil society. It's scheduled for Q1 next year. It's going to look at what Clara had mentioned, financing for development based on the current realities within international financing development. That's with our partner from philanthropy. And we want to make it more high level, engaging decision makers cutting across philanthropy, government, private sector, all the different stakeholder groups, to build on this knowledge of what is foresight. And I'm happy that Clara mentioned that there are over 33 chapters within the DFG. You cannot attack them all. So you have to seize the opportunities that present themselves. I know there's the Global Digital Compact, and the Ministry of Innovation and Digital Economy is heavily involved in that. And we keep discovering that there's a lot of grassroots activities around futures declarations. Alimi, who invited me to participate in this very important event, is doing so much. We have similar engagements within subnationals. So we appreciate the role of civil society. I know in a lot of contexts globally, the entry point for these sorts of conversations are academia and think tank, but the role of civil society in any advocacy campaign cannot be overstated. And so we do not take this lightly. We believe in a bottom-up approach, and we want to leverage this to continue to advance the work that we're doing at the national level, but also supporting continental efforts and the global ambitions. I will leave it at this for now, and I look forward to the interactions and beyond this interaction, being part of the ImPACT Coalition. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. I'm sure Clara was enthused listening to that, and excited at the fact that such a strong example of a country looking at the declaration and thinking, right, this is the action that we're going to take as a result, and the leadership that's been demonstrated in the few minutes that Mohammed has given there to and I think we may have found some members from Nigeria in the chat there, equally excited at the work that's being done, Mohammed, and UNICEF Innocenti are friends of ours in the ImPACT Coalition. So I wish you and them all the best in the projects that are to come in Q1 of next year. We'll continue with our speakers. Benvenuto to you, Luca. There we go. I attempted my Italian. That's all you're going to get from me today. But welcome to the call. It's also your first time with us as in the ImPACT Coalition. But Luca is from Ecosistema Futuro. Maybe that was my second attempt at Italian there. Here to share the work of embedding future generations into policy. It's a new partnership, a new project for you, Luca. So very keen to learn about the work that's taking place, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation, and I know some of you, so hi to everybody, and it's a pleasure. So yeah, I work for an organization actually that is called the Italian Alliance for Sustainable Development, which is a major network in Italian sustainable development. And a few years ago, we have started to think about introducing future studies, foresight, future generations' rights into the Italian kind of public debate. And there was a stepping stone that was very important for us. Some of you probably know in 2022, there was a constitutional reform that introduced in the first chapter of our constitution, actually in Article 9, the interest of future generations. As part of other things, but still it was the first time in our constitution that future generations were given kind of a personality. And that was an important reform for us. And it started to have an impact on the jurisprudence of of the higher court, of the tribunals, and so on. And then it came the Pact for the Future and the declaration. And at that moment, we were ready to launch this new partnership, which is called Ecosistema Futuro, which is basically a partnership that aims to place future studies, foresight, future generations' rights into the Italian public, political, and cultural debate. First, the important things that are not about my organization, but about what is happening, is that there's currently a bill in the parliament that is almost approved, potentially approved this month, on the intergenerational fairness evaluation, intergenerational fairness assessment. It's a very good bill. Of course, it's not operationalized. It's not approved. It's not operationalized, so it will take time. But basically, if it's approved, all the bills in the parliament will have to go through this kind of assessment. So we believe it can have a systemic impact in how in Italy laws are done. And we already, and combined with the constitutional reform, I think that's a very powerful tool. Our partnership, our initiative is now counting 30 organizations. This month we will welcome other 30 more organizations. I think it's a civil society partnership. I think it can be an example of how things can be done to promote the declaration. It's basically an ecosystem. Before colleagues from SWAF mentioned that there's a chapter in the handbook that's called the ecosystem, how to build an ecosystem, which is very inspiring. And it's basically an ecosystem. So you have very different actors. Some of them are already into future generations. Some of them are already in foresight. Some are not. And they kind of stay together around this kind of mission. Our goal is to include kind of public institutions. So, the National Institute of Health, the National Institute of Statistics, and so on. And then the activities are a number of activities, some of which you're very familiar with. One is research, foresight, future generations' rights, and so on. One other is engagement with the media and the public engagement. One is working with museums. We are launching in a few weeks a network of national museums working on the future. To engage citizenship on these things, and future generation will be part of that kind of literacy. And then schools and trainings for public for civil servants. We have already courses and academy with the civil servants, and then engagement with the government. In 2 weeks, we'll publish a position paper. The title, I mean, for all of you, is not surprising titles, and like anticipatory governance, how to design the future of Italy, also for the interest of future generations. And then on the basis of this position paper, we are going to build like dialogues and interaction and so on. I think in Italy there's quite an open space to do that. It's not a politicized topic. The bill is from the government. So there's space. Also, the Ministry of Education is open to pilot future literacy programs in the schools, the primary and the secondary schools. So there's a lot of possibilities. And I'm just closing with the last dream we have. It's the most ambitious project, is to build a number of citizen assemblies in 2026 and 2027 to engage more the public and the people into building, imaging, and dreaming also futures. These are the things we are working on right now, and we hope we can make it. Yeah, that's in nutshell, Jacob. I don't know if you have other questions.
That is fantastic. And you're one of the closest countries to Wales on the call. And yet that was news to me, which is always great to hear. So much work has been taking place.
But that's nice, because this is a topic where Wales is always spotted. Like,
well, exactly. It's refreshing to hear of other positive examples now taking place across Europe, and looking forward to supporting you in my capacity in the Future Generations Commissioner for Wales in our national conversation with the people of Wales as we develop the Wales that we want. So there are synergies and opportunities. Luca, there are some questions in the chat in how they might contact you and etc. So if you wouldn't mind taking a look at some of those questions, that would be fantastic. But I'm excited. Best of luck with the work that you're doing. We'll hand over to Daria for the final contribution, final speaker. Daria, you were getting equally as excited as me, I think, as you hear Lucas speak. But Daria, you've been a great friend to the ImPACT Coalition, but you're working on something in the background, aren't you? And I wondered if you wouldn't mind, as you have been updating the ImPACT Coalition in the calls, where are we at with this database?
Hello, everyone. Indeed, I have been very excited to hear about all the great work that has been done and the progress. And, a few months ago, we just said, what if we had a platform that could help us just, get all the information and updates real time about Ecosistema Futuro, about the Denmark ImPACT Coalition. What if we had a platform to do that? So we're working on that, and I'm really happy to tell you that we've been progressing a lot. It's been a lot of me doing some background work of research, but also gathering all this information in a very barbaric file. Let me show you my screen. It looks like this. So this is my big file for now, that we are transforming, of course, into something more user-friendly, but also something where you can do a specific research and connect with other people. So I've seen in the comments, for example, that the Denmark Coalition wants to connect with Luca. This is the kind of platform that we're hoping beyond, of course, in an offline mode, beyond all the connective work that we are doing to help us, just keep track of where everyone is at in terms of implementation. So it looks like this for now. My research file. So I've tried to categorize all my data entries by different tools to protect future generations. So whether it's institutions like a commissioner, like a parliamentary commission, whether it's hard law, so a constitutional article, or a bill, for example, or if it's a campaign that is being led, or if it's a soft law, so a declaration on future generations, for example, from the UN. So I've been trying to track all of these and put them in this document at all levels, really, at the multilateral, national, and subnational level. I've been trying to see if it's active, not active, forming, sometimes for bills, for the case of bills, for example, it's forming with the specific dates of creation and abandonment. And as you said, Clara, you know, this topic of protecting future generations is overarching. So how can we look at how does that translate in different policy areas, whether it's finance, whether it's human rights, whether it's culture and heritage, well-being, economy? There are so many different ways that this topic of intergenerational equity and future generations is being used across the world. And I'm trying to help us visualize that. So with a little bit of a description, lessons learned when we have some specific articles, we've tried to summarize them. It's the very beginning of this big Excel file. I've been trying to track impact as well. So if a bill or a constitutional article has led to any specific concrete action, if it has been used in jurisprudence, for example, and with the contacts and focal points, as you might see here, for example, one of my first lines is the MEGA, so Mobilizing Earth Governance Alliance, which in its hard points for campaign is the appointment of a UN envoy for future generations and national representatives for future generations. So these might be one for contact and focal point. And I think the most interesting feature for me is for you to be able to see who is working on that, how to connect with them if they do agree to share these kinds of information, and how to get engaged. So are there any regular meetings you can participate to, how to get engaged, etc., etc. So all of these is not the final product. I can reassure you that I hate looking at an Excel file right now. And I will be showing you the first iteration of the website that will look like this. So we're still looking at the details of how it will look like, etc., etc. We're working with a very good Welsh company that is called Academy, that has done wonders while I was on leave during summer, in transforming this barbaric file into an actual world map. So these are screenshots from the website. The community here, I want you to use it. I want you to be able to track the progress in your countries, but also countries around the world. So this is going to look like both a 2D and 3D map with the exact same information, depending on how you want to look at the information, with possibilities to do timelines. As you can see here at the top left. So for example, you want to see what has happened since 2020, between 2024 and 2025. This will be available for you to do so. What are the key initiatives that have been taken from date A to date B? And as well, you are going to be able to search by country. So, for example, Ahmed, if you want to look at Nigeria, you will be able to just go to your country, Nigeria, and look at all the tools that exist to protect future generations in your country, and that you might as well feed in the near future. And I'm sure there will be some missing. You're going to be able to search by specific filters. So say I want to look at all the constitutions, all the constitutional articles in the world, what countries do have constitutional articles in the world that mention future generations. And you're going to be able to visualize that through a color coding method. If you want to see all the initiatives in the finance sector, you're going to be able to pop that up. So I'm hoping that this is not just a tool that I will continuously feed through these kinds of meetings. Of course, where I always, just take my very big Excel file and just write down the updates. Like Luca, I've been writing. Ahmed, I've been writing as well. The updates, because since last time I saw you, there have been many things that have changed, so I'm trying to keep track of that, but put really it in service of you. In the near future, you are also going to be able to feed directly into the platform by updating any information, by adding your names if this is something you're willing to do. Yeah, and this is something hopefully by the end of September that's going to be up and working.
Thank you, Daria. I gave you the hardest task of coming last in the set of speakers, and you managed to cover so much ground. And I was itching not to interrupt you because I'm excited by what you're presenting and have been working on. And what an asset! What a great tool it'll be when it's out and active. And as the ImPACT Coalition, very excited to be partnering in support of that.
Oh, sorry. If I might just add, Jack, sorry, just one last thing.
20 seconds, Daria.
20 seconds. If you want to contribute right now to the big Excel file before it gets to the platform, I'll drop a link in the chat.
Perfect. Less than 20 seconds, even better. We're going to give the final words, and apologies, we have done the poor job of keeping to time more generally in general discussions, but please do use the chat if you have things to share. But we're going to give the last word, if I may, to Tad Daly, who has been very keen to share his experience at a recent conference. He's in JFK, I think, after a very long flight, and we've kept you to last, I'm afraid, Tad, with a few minutes to before the end of the call. But Tad, share us your experience at your.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Bojan, very much. Yes, I am Tad Daly. I am based in Los Angeles. I'm a former advisor to 3 members of the U.S. House and 2 senators, author of a book called Apocalypse Never, about the road to abolishing nuclear weapons forever. And I apologize for the commotion in the background. So yes, last month I traveled from LA to the United Kingdom to address a conference, fascinating gathering sponsored by Birkbeck College of the University of London, called, quote, "Does the World Need a Government?" Videos will soon be posted online, and the proceedings are going to be published next year as a book in a series from Springer called World Systems and Global Futures, which, by the way, is a pretty cool title for a book series, if you ask me. Get those book proposals in, folks. And Jack, there's just really 2 kind of big things, big takeaways that I want to share with this group that are directly relevant, I submit, to future generations. One is there was a real diversity among the types of participants, kind of fell into 3 broad categories. One was prominent international relations theorists from academia who often talk to each other in a language all their own, but here we're able to reach out beyond the academy. Another was in the trenches activists, like many of us, on all manner of global challenges, really focusing on how global governance innovation might meet those challenges. And then the third was some very prominent futurists from places like the Cambridge Center for the Study of Existential Risk, who were really worried about and thinking about how to mitigate the multiple global catastrophic scenarios that so many of us know so much about. The second thing I want to say about this conference is that in my mind, there's a real clear paradigm sort of emerged about our political and future historical imaginations, distinguishing between 3 categories. One is near-term global governance innovations that would not require any amendments to the United Nations Charter. The second category is those kinds of amendments, a wholesale redesign and rewriting of the 1945 San Francisco Charter, perhaps brought about by the kind of conference that the framers provided for in Article 109. And I hope most of you know that there is another ImPACT coalition founded at the same time in Nairobi. I guess that was about 15, 16 months ago. It was called the ImPACT Coalition for UN Charter Reform, but later this month, they're revealing a brand new name and a newly focused mission, but about that. And then the third category in this paradigm I'm putting forth that sort of emerged from this conference was thinking even beyond that. And at least for a time, leaving aside all questions of political reality and envisioning the optimal structures of world order that humanity ought someday to endeavor to create. That's the question. Does the world need a government? And my own talk.
Tad, I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut you short, and I tried to hold on a little bit longer than I should have. So apologies.
Okay, Jacob. Good.
But
Glad I got that. I'll post a link to the conference.
Please do.
I really think it's worth having a look.
And I think that in the follow-up to this, with the note that will be circulated to members, I might incorporate some of your thoughts into that. So maybe we'll just liaise via email about capturing any additional thoughts you have in that write-up following this.
Thanks for letting me share. Yeah.
That's
expanding our imagination for future generations near and far.
Absolutely. What a way to end. And does the world need a government? It certainly, well, the world certainly needs a little bit more time, which we've run out of in this meeting. See what I did there? I segued to the end. Thank you so much to all our speakers for joining us, for being as succinct as you possibly could have been in the time that we had, but inspiring work all around. We will follow up that the next meeting will take place, and the final meeting of the calendar will take place on the 10th of December. So put that in your diaries, the 10th of December. But in the usual manner, we will follow up with all that information in the coming weeks. Thank you. Have a lovely rest of the day, and a happy early, if that's the right phrase. But looking ahead, of course, to the UN International Day for Peace, which is upcoming, and I'll leave you with that thought as you go back to your working or professional lives. Take care.